Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first of 4 webinars designed for Northwest Central Illinois Workforce Board and Workforce Development Community. I'm just going to have my webcam on for a moment to say hello, and then I'm going to turn it off, and I'll put it back on if we have any dialogue at the end. Pam was going to try to do webcam today too, but we haven't quite figured that whole thing out. So let me put my webcam off. Let's see, I'm going to stop sharing webcam. Okay, so this morning is going to be an overview of kind of the major strategic and system design opportunities that are included in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. We briefly went through these by topic only during the board briefing webinar session that we had earlier this year. So now we're really going to drill down on the details of some of these strategic opportunities and system design opportunities over the next 4 webinars. And then there are 3 coming up. So the calendar is now set every Tuesday for the next 3 Tuesdays at exactly this time. We're going to meet together for these webinars. I have the schedule and topics on the last slide for a reminder, but we're basically going to be drilling down on sort of work-based learning opportunities, some of the funding options that are available under this piece of legislation, and then maybe some, just step back and look at some opportunities to build your board and have a stronger, more productive, more effective board. So for, why am I not in my advance? Session topics for today include these 5 bullets. You'll remember some of the themes from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act included kind of really strategic programming and building blocks, really expanding functional partnerships across the system, and a refocus or re-emphasizing training and skill building and credentialing and work-based learning. So those are some of the strategic themes, and then they also built in some themes to expand the one-stop system, create some more flexibility.
Melanie, excuse me, this is Pam. The slide isn't moving. We're still on the original slide with the schedule.
I'm sorry? What slide do you see, Pam?
The one with the schedule for the next session, the webinar schedule.
It doesn't say session topics?
No, mine doesn't anyway. Does anybody else's? Oh, there it is. Now I got it.
I've got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Pam.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let me just jump back in now that you all have the session topics in front of you. We're going to talk briefly this morning about sector strategies, pathways, work-based training, system and program operations, and a little bit on accountability and performance. I'm going to kind of outline these strategic. All right, whoever's with their pet, hit mute, please. Again, just a little bit of drilling down details, and then we're going to be talking about these more in upcoming sessions. All right, let me get that off my screen. So you've been through the new coordinated planning process in your area of the state. Previously, it was state and local plans. The new element that the board's gone through is regional planning. So this new unified state plan that covers multiple state agencies, it drills down and relates and impacts and affects the regional plan that you produce, and the local become part of that regional plan. I'm getting a lot of feedback. I'm going to actually and be
there's a lot of feedback here.
I'll mute, and I'm going to take Pam off. Okay, so I muted off Pam. You're going to have to go to your name and dismute you. or I will check in with you and dismute. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is sector strategies. And just kind of step back and just remind ourselves and share the definition of what sector strategies are. They're a partnership. Let me get my pen. They're a partnership that includes a combination of a full collection of folks involved, related, or stakeholders in workforce development. Industry representatives, economic developers, education and training providers, workers and organized labor, the public workforce development system, and other relevant community stakeholders. And they come together with a strategic intent to address human resource challenges. So that's what a sector strategy is in terms of by design. It's an intensive focus on a specific industry over a sustained time period, customizing solutions for multiple employers in a region. It's an initiative that strengthens economic growth and industry competitiveness. It benefits workers and employers, and I have a separate slide on that. It requires leadership by a strategic partner with deep industry knowledge, and it fosters systemic change. It really has kind of a bigger bang for the buck, and achieves benefits for industry, workers, and the community. All right, okay. So it is emphasized in WIOA sector strategies, and here's a summary of some of the research over time. So keeping in mind, I think I meant to remind you of this, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, a lot of what's embedded in terms of the strategic and design opportunities are built on experiences over the last dozen or so, 15 years, where really federal government and the federal partners put out grants and incentives to test different kinds of strategies, and certainly sector strategies was one of them. And the research that came back after several years of seeding these kinds is that there's a great potential for wealth creation. The return exceeds the investment. It assists all components. So it assists the industry, the workers, the training, kind of all the connections, the bridges. It really kind of has a very global impact on everything connected to that sector. It's a common response for common good, and it's really about emphasis and not exclusivity. So we're emphasizing certain structures in Northwest Central Illinois, certain sectors, but we're not ruling out the opportunity for the board and the programs to work with all employers and businesses and all workers in the area. So it's not an either or, it's a way to take the full market and create some priorities or some focus on certain pieces of that market without excluding any other part of the market. So competing, how you create a sector or cluster, it's a collective competing complementary or independent firms and industries that do business with each other or have common needs for talent, for technology, for infrastructure. They share industries or businesses that are in a sector or cluster together. They share buyers, they share supplier chains and processes, they share technology or they have that in common. And they utilize the same set of skills and tap into the same type of workforce and have the same type of worker needs in an area. So when we create all these common pieces and put them together, we have the ability to really cause there to be a definition of a sector and then really focus on it. And it typically, again, is where there's industries that are spurring economic growth and they're rich in jobs. And at this intersection, we really have an opportunity to create these very specific strategies. So in your Economic Development Region 6, which includes the Northwest Central area, your regional plan has identified primary targets, subsectors, and secondary targets. The primary targets are manufacturing, logistics, and healthcare. Subsector for all three primary targets is information technology. So this sector affects all of the three, it crosses the three, and then there's secondary targets here. So I'm going to just dismute. Let me go back to my attendees, dismute, and ask Pam. Can you hear me, Pam, and can we hear you? Okay, perfect.
I can hear you.
Yep, perfect. I wanted to see if you wanted to add any detail on the process, the selection, how these got picked, and kind of if you had any information to add about the sector, the initial launch of sector strategies in your area.
Well, first of all, just a quick reminder, 7 of our 8 counties are in Economic Development Region 6. We do have Ogle County that is in Economic Development Region 5 with the Rockford area. But basically, the 3 main sectors are the same in all 8 of our counties and both economic development regions. The primary sectors are manufacturing, logistics, and healthcare. And we do have the beginnings of some of the strategies. Some of you, as you know, we've been working with establishing a dialogue between the manufacturing companies in our area and the schools in our area, the superintendents of the high schools. And what we're trying to do there is determine the skills gaps, have the employers identify the skills gaps, and then work with the educators to help better prepare, let's say, the students for those jobs, whether it's through information, whether it's through the courses, essential skills. And we're just getting that dialogue started in an organized fashion. We've been talking about it for years, basically, but now we're starting to actually put some things together in more of an organized, formal fashion. We're focusing right now on basically 2 areas, the Illinois Valley Community College area and the Sauk Valley Community College area. We're pulling in some schools from other areas, but those 2 are our main focus. In terms of logistics, we've actually tossed around the idea, this was years ago, back in 2008, 2009, we had a logistics council, which served as a forum for our logistics industry representatives to get together, to hear speakers, talk about different topics in logistics, the logistics field, and then the opportunity for networking. We've tossed around that idea of kind of resurrecting that in the IVCC area, and then perhaps starting it in some of the other areas where logistics is certainly a major factor. Healthcare, we're doing something, we're just getting this initiative going, but we're collecting some workforce intelligence from the actual the workers themselves. And the purpose behind that is to collect the information on what is expected, what the culture's like in the healthcare area, and then to share that information with our job seekers so that they get a better understanding. They hear from the folks in the field, boots on the ground type people, what it's like to work in that particular field. And we're just getting that started. We're going to have a summit where we're going to bring individuals together and then start collecting that information. So those are really some of the sector strategies we're working on. We have pathway programs that we're working on as well. But I think those are right now the 3 focus areas for us for sector strategies.
Thanks, Pam. Did anybody have any questions at this point? I think all members' mics are open. Excuse me. Okay, excellent. Thanks, Pam. Okay, we're going to move on here to, again, providing some of the research from kind of a decade's worth of sector strategies being seeded by grants across the country. Excuse me. Advantages for business are reduced turnover, improved operations, which includes enhanced production, improved quality and competitiveness, better relations between labor and management. Skills definitely get upgraded. That's kind of one of the primary targets of a sector strategy. The overall and over time, the workers that you're hiring become better matched to your needs because the industry has an input on what's needed, both quantity, sort of timeline, and certainly the skills. Multiple employers benefit, and there's out of that comes a realized cost savings. These really formal, they're from an informal to a formal standing, networks are created that increase collaboration and benefit to all companies when needs and problems and issues are in common. This network it can now be a standing way to address those, and then increase diversity in the workplace. For workers, much better rates of employment, higher salaries, better benefits, more hours, increased job satisfaction. In addition to job satisfaction, a couple of specific pieces of research that I read were also about increased loyalty to the company. When a company makes this kind of investment in a sector strategy and in the workers and in the career pathway to get the workers into that sector, the job satisfaction is also complemented by company increased loyalty to an employer. They have improved prospects for advancing their career and ongoing increased access to education. So there are really comprehensive benefits and advantages for both businesses and workers with sector strategies. So as you move forward, either by getting directly involved or wanting more information, I just put a link on the bottom of the slide to a fabulous toolkit that's online that was created by kind of a host of folks that were involved in sector strategies. So to get started, Pam was talking about some of the work underway, especially around creating the network and the structure of organizations and partners that need to be working together. The first step is really getting the partnership and running. You've chosen your sectors, and then you get to identify kind of a champion, some way to have an organizer with expertise be kind of the lead for the sector strategy, and engaging employers and workers, and that really is what Pam was talking about where you are now. Part two is really convening and operating and sustaining the partnership. The functions of the organizer include the convening, the ensuring the leadership has both employers and workers connected to it, accessing and aligning resources, and providing the career services. And then part three is really making sure you do follow-up study and evaluation to achieve the goal so that you've created value for both employers and workers and that you have system impact. And so making sure you have a way to early on identify what your specific goals and outcomes are intended to be so that you have a way at the tail end of your sector strategies to really measure the impact and evaluate the impact you've had. Okay, so
Melanie, can I jump in here a minute?
Sure.
One of the things that I'd like to say is that if we look at our workforce board structure and the different committees that we have, I think we're very well set up to do exactly this because we want to be sure that we're meeting the needs of our business community. Our employer engagement committee will probably take the lead on many of these and at least establish the framework under which we can proceed and we can actually design our different strategies and initiatives. We have several committees that would be addressing the needs of the workers and actually establishing more of the content. For example, our One-Stop Partner Committee would be identifying the roles of our various partners, both core and required partners, which is basically the entire workforce system. We have a Targeted Populations Committee, which is actually working right now on identifying the obstacles that are three targeted populations, the ones that we've identified, but identifying the obstacles they face in getting jobs. And for example, we've identified the obstacles that the individuals in our area, individuals with disabilities face. We recently went through the obstacles that those returning citizens who are incarcerated, returning to the workforce, the issues that they're facing, the challenges. Our next group will be veterans. And then what we're going to do from there is identify the core obstacles or the common obstacles, and then try to develop, again, either strategies or initiatives that we can address those various challenges they face. We have a business liaison and marketing committee that will, we hope, market what we're doing, kind of, make sure that everybody in the community is throughout our 8 counties is aware of some of the issues or some of the initiatives that we have going on. We have an oversight committee that will kind of keep us on track and make sure that what we said we're going to do is actually what we're doing. As you mentioned, achieving the results that we've set out. And then we have a youth committee that's going to really kind of be the thread through this whole thing, because the youth are the pipeline. And so we want to make sure that they have their issues are being addressed, whether they be dropouts or in-school youth, whatever it may be, kind of the thread that goes through this. So I think our structure is actually, our committee structure is very well set up to follow this entire systemic change, as you say, in the strategies all the way through, from the beginning to end.
Perfect. Bruce, one of the questions I was just about to ask you, so I'm glad. I want to really ttie this back into people understanding, based on A, their interest, and B, their current committee that they're on, how this sector strategy work may coincide with what they're doing as a board member. And also, the way you've described it gives them the opportunity, A, to understand based on committee, and B, just to really be aware enough to get involved in additional ways if their committee role member way isn't enough for them, for example. So thanks, Pam. That was exactly what how I wanted to kind of tie it into your specific board. And then I think the sector strategies, what's the real beauty in them once they have kind of all of the strategic opportunity is really then drilling them down. And I think this is another board responsibility. This is probably, I think you said you have an operations committee and oversight would be involved, but really then taking those sector strategies and the focus on those sectors and drilling them down to aligning the services within the one-stop system. So this is just I'm pretty sure you used this slide before, but let me give you another quick review of it. So these are the kinds of services that are available through partnering with the workforce system. You can recruit workers, you can do some preparation pre-employment, there's all kinds of training available through the workforce system. And once you've identified what any of your sectors, so 2 of your primaries are here and 1 of your secondaries is here, and these are just examples that I had, you identify what is it that is a challenge for the manufacturing sector. Well, currently they don't have enough workers coming into the jobs, so they're constantly in recruitment mode. So what we would seek out as a strategy to address that is the development of talent pipelines specific to the manufacturing sector. Manufacturers will tell you that the math skills aren't strong enough for their hires, and those are the recruiting. So basic skills, we might run a math for manufacturing program inside our center, or with our adult educators, we might create some customized training there. So it's really taking a look at within each sector, what are the dynamics related to talent and how we can use our program strategies to address them. And then you end up really with a very specific kind of targeted program service delivery that's aligned to your sector strategy. And you can use this for organizing your services, for investing in different components of your programs at your career centers and in your area. So this is just an example of how that gets aligned. Okay, so let me just open the microphones one more time. I'll open and see if anybody has some questions on sector strategies. I'm going to move to career pathways and then on to a couple of the other highlights. Pam did a great job kind of connecting it to the board's work. Any questions? Okay.
Well, this is Pam again. Just to throw out one kind of a relative example, when we had one of our dialogues with our superintendents and our business or our manufacturers, one of the very questions that was asked was about math, and can math be taught differently to high school students who are college bound and those who are workforce bound, and specifically we had the manufacturing community there. And that was actually a very good discussion on how, yes, it can. And is it now? No. But can it be in the future? Yes. And so right there, we had exactly what you're talking about, and something that the manufacturing community identified as a need, and the superintendent sitting right there saying, yes, that's something we can look into. So I find it interesting you have that listed as one of the challenges for them.
Awesome. I mean, it's like, so it's the combination of all of these little pieces through all of this dialogue within a sector where you really get, and let me just go back, you really get to see how it unfolds. So for example, in the tourism sector, where there's always kind of high turnover, they need constant referrals, but they really want some better pre-employment training done. They want people that have maybe some soft skills, and we talked about this specifically, Pam, with your CEOs, kind of really focusing on that piece of a possible workforce development system enhancement. So you really get to see what kind of, here's all of the cards we have. How do we deal what card to what kind of pile, and how do we make kind of a whole set of programs aligned to an industry's need? And that's a perfect example live in your area where this conversation happens. Awesome.
And one of the things that our CEOs really liked was the idea of the work readiness workshops that you talked about, where you design your workshops around the industry itself and try to simulate some of the environment and the culture of that industry. And that is something that we have in our parking lot. It's something that we want to address, and we're actually starting the beginnings of working towards that.
Perfect. Yay! Okay, so now we're going to move to talking a little bit of the sort of second primary strategic building block that's incorporated in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Again, I'm not talking about anything new. I think career pathways, career ladders, career lattices, we've had this strategic component as a part of the system for a long time. It tended to be more dynamic and more a part of the structure in the education side of the workforce development system, but this is now becoming a dynamic structural force within workforce development as well, which is to create and develop these career pathways. They're a required component of the state plan. They were a required component of a regional plan and local plans. They're a required activity for local boards. It says you have to be involved in the development of career pathways and sector strategies. And they're listed as an option for the governor to include, or the state board to include, in the certification strategy that's unfolding over the next year. So they're definitely featured. Let me just give you, again, we're going to slow down and just make sure everybody's grounded in the definition of what these are. So I think for me, the difference between what I've seen before and what I have seen since and lately, especially because I got to involved in a very, very comprehensive career pathway project in Rhode Island that I think I mentioned to you folks. It's really building more bridges and making more connections. It's a series of connected education and training programs and support services, so it's this whole package that enables individuals to both secure employment in an industry and to advance over time with ongoing access to higher levels of education and employment in that sector. So it's getting more structured. It's taking all of kind of the informal pieces and the informal ways that career pathways are informing our work and getting them more structured and more well defined. Career pathways are rooted in long-standing approaches with success indicators. For example, apprenticeships are the best example of a career pathway. They've been used for low-skilled adults and out-of-school youth over time. They're backed by 6 signs of success and welfare to work evaluations. And then they got scaled with a lot of reporting done by the Workforce Strategy Center and the Aspen Institute. So there's a lot of good data. And they have been then taken from kind of these small individual programs and seeded to much more comprehensive programs that are statewide. So the last project I got to work on related to career pathways was actually a statewide project in Rhode Island. Okay, oops, sorry, and again, for those of you that want more interest and want really to kind of dig deeper and get down into the weeds, have listed a link to a great toolkit that's available on site here on this slide. So successful career pathways, this is kind of a checklist. So they're aligned with the skill needs of high-demand industries. There are a full range of secondary adult education and post-secondary options are in the package. So all of the possible connections to training and education needs that someone on this pathway might need are connected. There's integrated education and training, which means we're combining work and learning at the same time. More often, those two are happening together on a career pathway, because once we see as you progress what you need, we can better combine the learning while you're working and the working while you're learning. They definitely are intended to lead to the attainment of an industry-recognized degree or credential, which is a very important component. And then folks on these pathways start stacking these credentials and really having this portable, collection of badges that say that they are well qualified to be on a pathway in that industry. They help a worker advance within a specific sector or field, and they include academic and career counseling and somehow most importantly, maybe as we found in Rhode Island, really wraparound support services. So the pathway is really putting the whole package together in a step-by-step format so someone can start and advance within a particular sector. One of the Center for Law and Social Policy is contributor to the toolkit that I mentioned online, and their findings is that the 3 critical components to a pathway is it has to be well connected and transparent. The education, the training, the stackable credentials, and the support services, they can't just be out there for someone to choose to use if they could find them and need them, leaving all the navigation up to an individual. They just have to be well connected. There has to be lots of places for people to get in and get on and off over time of a career pathway. So I can start, I can work, I can step back off and rebuild and get back on, and mix the work and learning as I go over time. And so multiple entry points and multiple exit points, first job, second job, third job, etc. along a pathway. Okay, so and I wanted to just quickly, oh good, and I do have some time here, show you kind of the dynamics of what a career pathway looks like, and kind of drilling down to a really practical tool that you could see the dynamics of in your area. So in Rhode Island, I did get to work on this fabulous project. They ended up with, let me see, 7, 10, about 15 different career maps, we were calling them, but that's what they are, career pathways. And there's a sample of one here. It's just hard to read, but I'm going to click in so we can do some kind of a quick dynamic overview of these career pathways. This happens to be a health career overview in patient care jobs, and this is one of your primary targeted. So I'm going to go on to, and that link is live on the screen, so I'm going to go into the dynamics of this. So I'm now in the Governor Workforce Board website in Rhode Island, and you can see there's a whole page dedicated to these career pathways. And here's just an overview of the pathways themselves, and each of these are clickable. So if we wanted to look at the patient care jobs, what I love about these particular career pathways, it's really important to show that the combination of education and work experience is how one advances up along this. And within these particular, this particular model of a career pathway, each of the particulars, so here are the kinds of jobs you can get with short-term training down at the bottom, or high school degree. If you have a less than high school, if you have a high school diploma, then there's another collection of jobs relevant to patient care jobs in healthcare with only a high school diploma. And then post-secondary non-degree, associate's degree. So I'm working up the educational level and the work experience level and working up a path of jobs. So these are well connected. So if I were to look at a job that's short-term training, patient care attendant, orderly, each of these jobs also click then into the online version of the occupational information called My Next Move. So orderlies, all of the dynamics and all of the information. So if an individual is exploring this career pathway, they have this great link here. And that link exists, you can see the yellow hiding up, for each of these jobs. And so I can find out what kind of training is needed, what kinds of jobs are projected to be growing, what kinds of salaries are involved. Let me just show you a few more dynamics. Again, they have all of these and all of these different things. And then they actually have created, let me try the manufacturing, which is another one of your primary targets. They've actually created a sample manufacturer pathway where they show how a machinist can work to a machine tool programmer, can work to a mechanical engineer. And each of these are also linkable. When I tap on them, I open up a wealth of Rhode Island specific information, including names of training providers. All this summary information that you see here has a tremendous amount of detail created right inside the link. So this is an example of seeing this strategy called, career pathways, and being kind of in a position where you're about to actually take what you have in Illinois, make it specific to your area, and make it a dynamic resource. You can see how this is a practical vision or version of what that is. Okay, let me see how I get back to my slideshow. Okay, so and then the final thing that we found in Rhode Island was, I as a trainer, pathways in action at the ground level with workers. 95% agreed that they were useful. I'm sorry for that truck noise. 75% of those strongly agreed with this statement. So it's well worth it to do this, to invest in this strategy, and then to take this strategy and drill it down into practical applications. So this is kind of what the big picture looks like. Let me just check. Does anybody have any? I'm going to dismute you all. Does anybody have any questions or comments? So as a board member, and you're stepping back and you're looking at your high-level position on the board, you're seeing the combination of these two strategies really align and be dynamic. So this is really what's going on in the programs and the centers and all the different sites where all the partners operate. They get workers, and they're trying to get workers jobs or advancing them in jobs. And they have a collection of tools. Work-based training, individual training accounts are two that are most specifically aligned with the Title IB programs. And then adult basic education as well, and it getting more contextual will help. So this is the dynamics in a workforce center. And we just have to make sure that once we have our sector strategies, we make sure we use our sector strategies to design the pathways into each of those. So if I'm looking for a career pathway project, the first 3 pathways I'm going to develop is a pathway into the manufacturing jobs, the healthcare jobs, and the logistic jobs in your area. So what does that pathway look like in Northwest Central Illinois? And then how to make sure I drill down and make it really vibrant, a dynamic strategy with dynamic applications in the Workforce Center itself. Okay, so any questions?
Hey, Melanie, this is Pam.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Pam. Who actually put all this together? Was it a consultant or was it staff? Who actually physically did the work?
Yeah, well, we had the luxury, and it was a luxury of a workforce incentive grant. So the grant, specifically the grant included the resources for the development of the pathways, the research and the documentation and the development, and then the gal that got hired to do this, was fabulous, and that's why we got these great online. And I do think that's a good question, because it is a fair amount of work. I think you just have to keep your eye on all of the different grants that are coming out and all of the different ways that the industry partnership grants, all these different kind of grant opportunities that come across your desk, Pam. You have to be looking at them for what else can I get done out of that grant. So if I get an industry partnership grant, can I make sure to include the career pathways as a part of the work that gets done? Because the connection between the two, you can have sector targets that aren't necessarily aligned with the dynamics in a center, but if you go through a development of career pathway, then you have a very specific way to align the work at the practical level. But in Rhode Island, we have the luxury of having some funds to hire some consultants to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions? So I think that site's worth kind of, clicking around on just to see, again, you're starting from this really big, massive undertaking, but I wanted people to be able to see if when you drill down to the practical level, and especially the endorsement from the customers. I mean, when 95% found those maps useful, and I started out with thinking, wow, these are really kind of maybe overwhelming. So it was a good experience, and they're good tools. Okay, so now I'm going to move toward. I'm going to move toward describing some of the other highlights within the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, specifically some of the work-based training, the operational, and the program and performance accountability highlights. And I'm going to go just not spend too much time on the work-based training options, because next Tuesday at 8:30 we're going to have a whole hour to spend. But I wanted to kind of put the 2 pages of options together just to review, because I think what I like best and what I'm most excited about in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is its focus on work-based training. There's enough evidence now to really say the combination of work and training, when you put the 2 together, as opposed to train, stop, work, stop, train, stop, work, stop, that you have much more significant and much more global outcomes that are good for the system, the business, and the worker. So some of these are not new, but there are new combinations of how the program got put together, or new pieces that are local. So incumbent worker training, for example, it's not new. It's where you work with an employer and you train their current employees for advanced manufacturing, production, or for new jobs that the employer is creating for some reason at that job. And now you have an ability to reserve money, but you can also make incumbent worker training happen locally. It used to be through a statewide process prior to this. Transitional jobs have been used in different kinds of programs before, but now they're more globally being adopted by the workforce system. So transitional jobs are common in the welfare to work programs, or the prisoner transition programs coming out of prison and getting back into work. You basically create an opportunity for short-term employment Typically, the salary is paid by the sponsoring agency, and it allows an individual to establish a work history, get some kind of world of work, cultural experience, get back into knowing what it's like really to have work as a significant part of their life. So pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship training programs have been pulled into the workforce development system in a significant way. They automatically go on to your eligible training provider list, and they're a fabulous way of a training program that's built around a career pathway. So the work's all been done. If they're available in your area or region, they're great to just kind of pull into the system. Youth work experience, again, it's been part of the program, but now it's much more significant, especially for out-of-school youth. They really want to focus on work experience for that population. Within the Title IB programs, on-the-job training and customized training remain. They're giving you some more flexibility on the wage rate. The maximum amount has gone up, and creating a share reserve for customized training, and job shadowing and fellowship. So this is kind of the list of all of the different work-based training options that exist in WIOA, and they're better. Some of them are more targeted for certain populations. Several of them really have kind of a financial maximum minimum attached to them. So in the webinar next Tuesday, we're going to just spend some time really talking about the strategy of work-based training and which of the options work maybe for what kind of population, and how really to maybe talk a little bit about how to really need to pull employers in for this strategy be successful, because they are the trainer when we're talking about work-based training. There is also a new classroom-based training option, but we I don't need to spend any time on that because we're going to really do the work-based ones. So let me also just give a little bit of a highlight on the performance. So any questions on work-based training? Let me see. You are all open mic. Open mic. Any questions on work-based training? All right, we're gonna again spend time on that next week. So while they have yet to kind of figure out the new performance accountability, I personally think this is what's holding up the release of the final regulations for the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. There are the most significant kind of technical changes are within this section of the law, and they really have made it a historic opportunity across core program partners to really align the performance accountability system and integrate reporting. So it's creating a lot of logistical and technical questions, but all of the core programs, Title IB, Adult Dislocated Worker, Vocational Rehabilitation, Adult Education, and the Wagner-Pfizer Employment Service all have measures in common: employment rate, retention, earnings, credential attainment, skills gain, and employer engagement. This will allow for comparability. We will now be able to compare programs to each other, local areas to each other, regions to each other, states to each other. I mean, once you make the measures core, you've created a tremendous opportunity to compare and contrast performance across multiple dynamics and components of a system, and certainly across states. The intent was you would be negotiating as a region for your initial performance measures, but without final regulations. The performance measures and accountability system is still kind of in a void, but once it kicks in, they will be collectively negotiated as a region for local levels. The process will be created by the governor and the state board, and in consultation with local boards and CEOs. Expected levels of performance were intended to be in your applied for the first 2 years, but again, that's probably not happening. There's definitely a whole host of new reporting and publication requirements, and a brand new component of the legislation is outside evaluations of programs begin in year 3. So that's just kind of a highlight of some of the program performance and accountability. So I'm just going to wrap up here and see if we have any questions. So as we go through the webinars, I think for board members, you have a general understanding of the board's work and your role. You have probably a more specific understanding of your contributions based on the specific committee that you are working on. But I think what's also required is, even with those two clarifications, is to really kind of maintain sort of an overview role as well, so that your expertise kicks in places where it's really critical and important for the local board, on the strategic contributions, and especially for businesses, the unique contributions that business board members can make to the work of the board as well. So I'm going to open it up to have just over maybe 5-6 minutes for questions. Anything folks want to add? Anything, Pam, you want to add to the conversation? Maybe a little heads up on what specifically might be next for board members now that the regional plans are in. What it's starting to look like from July forward in terms of the work. Anything? Questions, comments, clarifications? Mics are all open.
I will let everybody else go first. I do have just a couple comments, but if there's anybody else, I would certainly encourage them to bring forth their comments.
This is Mary there.
Oh, go ahead, Marcia.
I have a question. Are the slides going to be available for us to copy? Because there's a lot of good information in there, I felt. And is the Rhode Island website available?
Yes and yes. So I know Joanne has a copy of the PowerPoint slides. I think they can be distributed either universally or on request. Joanne, I see. Are you here? Do you want to?
Yes, I'm online, Melanie.
Hi, Joanne.
Hi. The slides were emailed out to all of the members, but I can surely send them out again.
So,
thank you.
The announcement of the webinar, Marcia, might have had an attachment. So,
okay, I'll check that.
Yeah, and then I'm pretty sure if the links aren't live in your slides, then you can cut and paste that information into your web browser to point it to the Rhode Island, the Governor's Workforce Board's website in Rhode Island. And there really is a tremendous amount of career pathway work done there. And it's really, it's the next generation. We took what the education community had done, and they had really done through their programs of study. They created all the bridge, so the programs of study were aligned, and then we just added to it kind of the adult worker perspective of how you combine work into that mix and get you to move forward. So it's really, it really is the next generation of career pathways.
It's excellent. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments, clarifications? Let's see, we have Mary, Carrie, Diana, Fidencio, Kathy, Sally, Sarah. Anybody want to chime in?
I did have a question. This is Fidencio. The future meetings that are being recorded, will we be able to access them through our computers?
Yes, again, and I think Joanna, I'm pretty sure we created a YouTube page for the board. Is that what we did, Joanne? So the first round of webinars that we did earlier this year, January, were published there, and we're going to take these recordings and make them available as well. Is that what we did, Joanne? Do we have a YouTube page for the board?
We've not created a YouTube account yet, but I do have all of the recorded videos from January that I believe I shared with all members. But Fidencio, I'll make sure you get another copy.
Okay.
Right. So this was recorded. We're actually still recording, and will also be available, and then as will the next 3 Tuesday morning webinars as well.
And I'll start on the YouTube account.
Aren't you cool? Yeah, other boards that I do webinars with, it's the easiest way to move this big data around is to just kind of think of it as a cloud and keep the recordings there, because they tend to be a lot of data once you're doing a webinar recording. Anybody else? Let's see, Sally, Kathy, Diana, Carrie, Mary. Any other questions? All right, Pam, you had a couple of things, right?
Yeah, you were just asking, like, what's kind of the next steps. And as we've been having each of our committee meetings since the regional plans, local plans are done, the MOU is done. As I told them, now we get into kind of the meat of what we're doing. We spent a lot of time organizing our structure. We spent a lot of time putting together our plans. Now it's time to start acting on some of those. And I mentioned as we were going along some of the things that the committees are doing. The Employer Engagement Committee, working on not only our employer forums, but also one of the things that came out of our most recent Employer Engagement Committee was how they would like a flow chart of just exactly kind of what you said, on and off ramps, but for businesses. And what's available for the businesses, how can they access them, which of the partners, whether it be core partners or required partners, but which of the partners offer those particular types of activities, whether it's internships, whether it's recruitment, screening, et cetera, et cetera. So we're working on a flow chart to make available to our businesses. Certainly our youth committee was working on career pathways. We had applied for a grant. Unfortunately, we didn't get the grant. It was a state grant. But the structure, the model of that grant, I think is something that we can certainly apply and implement locally. Our One-Stop Partner Committee, as I've already mentioned as well, that one, we've kind of been focusing on journey mapping with that committee. Again, the on and off ramp for the workers, for the job seekers. So we're looking to develop that as we go along. The partners have been absolutely phenomenal. We've talked about meeting maybe once a month and going over any challenges, going over any questions, cross-training staff, having staff work together and develop some of these things. And then I mentioned our Targeted Populations Committee actually already taking 2 of our 3 populations, identifying the challenges so that we can determine where the commonalities are and where we can actually start structuring some sector strategies around those and identifying. So right now I think we're into the let's do it kind of phase as opposed to let's just plan it kind of phase.
Excellent. Very cool. Go-getters. So I have one more slide just to remind folks we are now on a Tuesday morning schedule. So next Tuesday, July 5th, we're going to be talking about maximizing work-based learning. I'm sorry, by the way, for those of you who tried to join the webinar last week. I was in a torrential downpour. So we've added the remaining Tuesday, July 12th, has been added back in. It will be funding options, and then July 19th will be board building. So 4 Tuesdays in a row, same time, same place. Okay, any final questions, comments, clarifications?
Thank you very much, Melanie. Great job.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.